Okay, good morning, everybody. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back. Parshas Yisro, 5784. Parshas Yisro really has two major themes here, and that is the story of Yisro and, coming to the Jewish people. Yanush, welcome back. And we have the Matan Torah. It's a little bit unclear, and the Rishonim really grapple with this, if these stories happen in chronological order as they are written in the Torah, or they're written out of order. And there's not just two opinions on this, three opinions on this. It could be that the story of Yisro is actually split up into two, that maybe one of them happened right in order, right the way it's written in the Torah, but then when he gives his advice to Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe that happens after the Torah was given, because how is he passing all these shilas if the Jewish people don't really know much halacha yet, right? So different opinions out there. It's very important to discuss. Next week, the Bar Mitzvah boy is actually going to be discussing this in his drasha, a little bit related to the order and the chronological order of the parshios. It intrigued him enough to develop an idea. Markowitz, Rashi, and the Rabbi. Usually Rashi, just to appreciate this, Rashi generally is the one that throws out a muktam uchar b'Torah pretty liberally. So for him, Rashi will indicate that it's not necessarily written in the right order. This is the way it's written in Torah, but that's for other lessons, and maybe we'll get into one in a moment, but it's not necessarily chronological. And the Ramban takes a very strong stance that it's always written in order, unless the Torah specifically says that, like, this is year 2, and then it says yet later it's year 1. Then you know it's out of order. Otherwise, the Torah is written mamish in the way it's supposed to be written. So with that in mind, according to those that say Yisro was maybe after the Torah was given, after Yom Kippur, that's the after the second Luchos were given, that's when Yisro comes back. We have one, I think, important point to raise, and then a question. The important point to raise is that Yisro comes back, not just by himself, but he brings Tzipora, as the Torah calls Eshes Moshe, we just mentioned, and Moshe's 2 children, Gershom and Eliezer. According to Rashi and other Mefarshim, it could be that those 2 sons and Tzipora miss all of Matan Torah. Whoa, right? That's right. Moshe brought them to meet Aaron back in Parsha Shemos at the end of Parsha Shemos, when Moshe begins, his ascent as a leader of the Jewish people. But Aaron says, don't bring these people, Ala Rishonim anu mitzta'arim is the language in Rashi. We're already concerned about everybody here. You don't need to bring more people into a dangerous place. So leave them back. They're safe already in Midian, and leave them with Yisro and Tzipor, with Mami, and which is, I don't know, the right decision. I would say that's a good decision. But there's a loss that happens there. When you are not part of that event, that transformative event that changes Klal Yisrael, you're right, your physical safety is assured because you're far away from the danger. On the other hand, you don't get the change with the Jewish people. It's harder for you to feel the tzara of the Jewish people, to feel their pain, to be part of those lows and those major highs. Therefore, they don't just lose out on the torture and the servitude and the sadness and difficulty the Jewish people are going through, but they also lose out on experiencing the 10 plagues, leaving Mitzrayim, Korban Pesach, Kriyas Yamsuf. And those are really formative experiences that they lose out on, right, as a result of this. And it even is, according to many Mefarshim, many Rishonim, that Moshe's 2 children, Moshe's own children, lose out on Matan Torah, the most seminal event in Jewish history. They lose out on that event. Now, with that in mind, you can understand a little bit about how when Moshe chooses a new leader for the Jewish people, it's not his children. It's not a natural progression. Moshe, several times, In Chazal, it says, I want a death like Aaron. I want to have a death like his. We could say, okay, he wants to die peacefully. He wants to know when he's going to die. Aaron went up the mountain, and no. The Ksav Sofer says what he wanted in life was to know that when he passed on, that his children were going to take his mantle. And that didn't happen. And in a certain way, a lot of us would love that, would love that, either to know, to cherish, to feel that the next generation is taking over from where I am, where I left off. And in Moshe's position, that didn't happen. Aaron, it very clearly did. Aaron took off his big day kahuna, and he gave them to his son. Right? What's his son's name, by the way? Elazar Kohen Gadol, right? It's funny. He has a son, Elazar, and what's Moshe's son's name? Eliezer, right? Interesting. I don't know. As we're learning, I'm thinking about that. They have children with very, very similar first cousins, similar names. But you do see here that they miss out on a lot of these very important experiences. And when you miss out on that, it's hard to feel part of Am Yisrael. It's hard to feel that in a very, real way. I think that's a big challenge for us now. Feeling like we're on the sidelines. We're very much not even the sidelines. Maybe we're not even in the stadium. Maybe we're just, we're watching from a very far distance on our phones and on our screens, and we're not there. And it's harder to experience in a way, okay, we're safe. We're here. Good. We're not in danger zone. But another way, we're not experiencing the lows and the highs of Am Yisrael. Yeah.
If my memory serves me correct, I think during the Navi, was it Moshe's grandchildren that went astray?
Pesel Micha. Yeah.
Right. So which grandson was it? Eliezer's or Gershom?
I think Gershom's. Yeah.
I was just thinking, Eliezer's a very common name. Gershom, I never heard the name. At least for me, maybe it is Gershom. Eliezer was part of that.
So Levi had 3 children: Gershon, Kehas, and Merari.
Right.
Presumably, well, we'll see why he's named in a minute. That's the next topic we'll discuss. But it's like a family name almost.
No, but maybe it kind of got suppressed because of what? Because he was the son of Gershom, and he went astray. Father has to take responsibility for the son sometimes.
Right. So you see how far they 2 generations later, what happens? Yeah. Okay. Also, that's I think the point that is addressed just by the chronological order issue. But the other question that we need to ask is, what was so unique about Yisro that he gets Matan Torah? Like he gets Matan Torah in his parsha. It's not called Parshas HaTorah. Okay, technically it's called by some word in the first pasuk of the parsha becomes a name. Okay, great. But the whole story of Yisro is juxtaposed to the story of Kabbalas HaTorah. Why is that? Mipnei ma zacha Yisro, right? What is so special and unique about Yisro that he is the one that is zochet to this? Okay, so good. Yisro stood up to Paro.
Yisro was the one that said, "Don't do this." He ran away. He was the one who got into the state.
But also with his ideas, we were able to take it to Torah and be able to implement. He gave the foundation out of one thing.
He gave, with his ideas, he gave access to more people. Sorry, that more people could access the Torah. Great. I think a cousin of mine, Rabbi Josh Hess, was here for Shabbos a while ago, and he shared the following idea. He said that what Yisro was able to do is that very often we get stuck, organizations, companies, schools, everything is the same way. Even our own selves, we get stuck in like the same framework and the same paradigms about how we should do things, what programs should be run, and how they should be run. And then what happens is that like there are problems with that, and they're not meeting the needs of the next generation. They're not meeting the needs of the challenges of what's happening right now. They worked previously. So it takes an outsider like a Yisro to say, no, Navolti Bol. If you're going to do it this way, it's not going to be effective. And if we want to not reshape the Torah, but make the Torah relevant in our generation, we need to be able to think outside the box. Torah can't be taught the same way that it was taught 50 years ago. It needs to be taught a different way. All the more so, 150, 20 years ago. It needs to be taught a different way in this generation. So Yisro was the first one that was able to say, let's make it relevant. Moshe, we need to expand, your arsenal, your team of people that is educating and adjudicating the Torah. Otherwise, there's going to be very little access to the Torah itself. Yes, Shiur.
Maybe that's why, the Matan Torah and stuff, like the whole idea of, and bringing up over and over, that he was a hanging that he essentially had been perhaps an outsider, and it says in Rashi, after Yitro saw all the amazing things that Hashem had done, that he bought in, so to speak, bought into Hashem and was a true supporter. And sometimes Jews by choice wind up being more spiritual and more dedicated to Judaism than some born Jews. And maybe, here you need the outsider's perspective to see, sometimes when you struggle through some things, if you're a real sports person, which I'm not, but, when there's certain games on Shabbos, and it's like, oh, if I work for Shabbos, I could be at that game or something. And a lot of times it's a tircha, whereas sometimes if you see it through new eyes of a Jew by choice or something like that,
Right.
It's like, wow, there's a different perspective.
Right. So you're saying that the reason why Yisro is connected to Matan Torah is that Yisro himself was a Jew by choice. And when you look at things in that way, we are very inspired by those individuals. I was in Miami this past week, and I was reminded of a story that happened last year. So my father davens on Friday night. They don't allow a minyan in the building that they're in. Next door, they have a whole shul, and yeshiva week, it's like packed, and there's like barely any air conditioning. So Mincha Ma'ariv, Kabbalah Shabbos, they daven overlooking the beach. It's very beautiful, and it's quiet. So and the sun's coming down, very, very beautiful. So we're davening. This is last year. This year it didn't happen. We're hoping for the same story. And a guy walked by, and we're like, just out. Like, there's nothing unique about this Kabbalah Shabbos than other Kabbalah Shabboses. I prefer to daven in the shul. We Jews should be davening in shul Friday night. If you ask the shul, daven the shul. I very rarely get to daven with my father. I think it's a very special thing. I daven with my father. So we're davening, and people are walking, watching us as we're davening. Again, regular mincha, Kabbalah Shabbos, no yidid nefesh for this minyan. Okay, somebody walks by and just starts staring at us, and comes closer. Curious. Again, this is pre-October 7th. Curious. And I walked over to him and I said, "Can I help you?" He said, "I haven't prayed in 50 years. Can I please pray with you?"
Oh, chills.
This is so inspiring to me.
What is this?
So I brought him in, and he said that he grew up in Haifa. His parents were Holocaust survivors. Very little Jewish education. He barely could read the Hebrew. He grew up in, and I had an art scroll sitter with me. I gave him my father's art scroll sitter, and he davened with us. He davened Kabbalah Shabbos and he left. I invited him for the meal. Didn't ask my mother first, and his wife was waiting for him, and he left. But we don't appreciate the power, right, of a simple mincha. Like we don't realize in the Kabbalah Shabbat that we're taking in Shabbos, Lechadodi. It's hard for us to really appreciate that each week, week in, week out. Sometimes it becomes like, but really it's not. Oh my God, wow. So that person, his zechuyos, he's inspiring us. And that's what Yisro did. Great point. Shira, last point here is that Vayishma Yisro, Kohen Midyan. We are very careful that, especially with people that evolved throughout life, Bali Tshuva, Gerim, that we do not remind them of their past. It's actually, the Torah says, we're being very, very sensitive to this. We don't say, hey, how was that bacon cheeseburger? Can you let me know? Describe it to me. Tell me how it tastes. We're not allowed to do that. They want to talk about it. Kol kavod. Why are we calling Yisro a Kohen Midyan? He was the priest of Midyan. Okay, Chosei Moshe we discussed. Okay, maybe that's a little. First time it's fine, but why are we reminding him of his past? What? Oh, and it's good. And if you want to tell me, yeah, right. It's not like he just had a PhD from Midyan University. He was, he was an idol worshiper, presumably. He was, so what are we doing here? So it says Rav Sternbach, near Levar Shabbat Kasav Laharbos Ma'alaso. This shows even Yisro's greatness. Even though he was a leader, he was probably well taken care of as a high priest in Midyan. Azav Dato Mamado Hagadol Kechoin V'Yotz Para. He left all those positions. He was a Yoetz, he was an advisor to Paro, he was a leader in Midyan. You know why? Because he saw truth in Judaism. He saw MS in Judaism, and he was able to throw away everything else, even though he was maybe living a more luxurious lifestyle as a non-Jew, as a Komer Lavo Dezara, as an advisor to Paro. He left all of that. He left all of that to join the Jewish people and everything that meant. And it's fascinating is that this story of Yisro comes right after Milchamas Amalek. Even after he sees that the Jewish people are being attacked. For what reason? No reason, right? Hatred, no reason. No reason. No reason. Just because we exist. He didn't come right after Kriyas Yamsuf. He came after Kriyas Yamsuf and after Milchamas Amalek. Rashi points that out, that he is with us in the highs and the lows. Because he's tying himself to Klal Yisrael. That he had this search for truth. He had this truth inside of him. And that if there was something that was going to be true, he wanted to find it and be a part of it. Right? We live in a world today where truth is subjective, flexible. Whether you are a politician, you are a member of the associated, the free press, whatever it's all flexible. Yisro himself saw truth for what it was and wanted to attach himself to truth and connect himself to that in every which way. And therefore the Torah goes out of its way as the first appellation of Yisro is to call him a Kohen Midyan, to describe his greatness through his search for the truth. So he takes his two sons, he brings his two sons back. They Shnei Baneha, we mentioned their names, Gershom and Eliezer. You tell me the problem with the following. Who's older? No. Gershom is older. He names his son Gershom. Ki Amar, Ger Hayisi Beretz Nochriya. I was a sojourner, right, in a foreign land. V'shem echad Eliezer. Why did I call my son Eliezer? Ki Elokei Avi Bezri. The God of my fathers helped me. V'yatzileni michera paro, and he saved me from Paro's sword. Rashi explains that one of Paro's men tried to kill him, and his neck turned to stone. And actually, Amud Shayish, to be more precise, Rashi says it turned into marble. Marble. Now, what Gershom, because I was a foreigner in a foreign land, and number two, Hashem, the God of my father, saved me from the sword of Paro. What is any question or inconsistent about those two names?
First one, I would reverse them.
Why would you reverse them?
If I was saying, what do you call, I think that's number one.
That's number one.
Priority.
So I saw this question in Rav Druk, actually in Rav Druk's Haggadah. He asked this question, I have it here. And then I saw Rav Sternbach and Rav Moshe Feinstein. They all asked the same question, is that the names are out of order. Chronologically, the first name is, I was saved from Paro. That should be the first name. The second name should be, I lived in a foreign land, because that's the way it happened. So why does Moshe say it not in that order? What?
He was already a Mitzrayim first.
But you're saying there's always a sojourner in a foreign land? So that's where he grew up, though. We consider us, yeah. So maybe Rav Sternbach. So maybe Rav Sternbach is addressing maybe answering your question. So giving the same answer. He says, "Shlofi seder ha'ma'oros haya kodem tzarech likro Eliezer, ve'kodem hitzilo mecheraka. Rak achar kach haya gar be'eretz nochriya." Afterwards, he was living in a foreign land. The simple answer is, no, the foreign land to him is not Egypt, it's Midian, because he grew up, he knows Egypt. Elabal lamdenu lidoros. Right? This comes to teach us for generations. The first thing that a Jew needs to recognize is that we're not where we're supposed to be. That's the first thing that should be on our minds. And not to connect ourselves too much to the foreign land. Even if that means we get a passport, even if that means we have a citizenship, right? Jews in 200-300 years ago, they couldn't live fully in a foreign land, even though they were so much integrated in society. They couldn't, weren't allowed to. So this is to remind us, Moshe Rabbeinu says, a Jew can never forget that they are outside of the land of Israel. If that's in fact where they are. That is Rav Sternbach's answer. Rav Druk gives the following very sensitive thought. He says we need to think about when Moshe and Tzipporah had their two kids. He says that Gershom was born early on, he argues, earlier on in Midian, and Eliezer was born later. How do we know that that's a possibility, that Eliezer could be born later? Is because when Moshe was going down to Mitzrayim, Eliezer still didn't have a bris milah, and the very enigmatic story with Moshe was going to be killed because Eliezer didn't have a bris milah, and Tzipporah ended up giving the bris, happened then. So it seems like Eliezer was born post-burning bush. So Druk makes the following suggestion. He says, they're out of order. But the second name reflects, thank you Hashem for saving me. So it's very hard to be so thankful for Hashem saving me and shining sashkacha on me right now when the Jewish people are still suffering in Mitzrayim. It's not right. It's not right to do that. Sure, you could recognize it and appreciate it, but to give one's child a name that reflects the salvation that God was with me, what about everybody else? So he says that first, he gave a name of that I'm in Eretz Nochriya. When did he give his name Eliezer? Hashem saved me. After Hashem promised Moshe Rabbeinu that you're going to go to the Jewish people and you're going to save them. That's when the wheel started turning and the Geula process started happening. And only then did Moshe feel that he can thank Hashem for his personal salvation, because he knows the national salvation is going to come. Yeah.
I also answered my question that I was order of saying Moshe and calling Midian.
Yeah, so how does that relate to, yeah?
Because you see Moshe's character, right? That it's not about me. It's always about the nation. It's about everybody else, not about me. The same thing. He couldn't do anything for himself personally in terms of the name because everybody else was enslaved. So over here, it's not because I'm the son-in-law, right? I'm second. I don't have to be in the first position. I can be in the second position. It shows kind of enough. Moshe always was. It wasn't always about. It was never about him. It was about Klaus.
Hey, very nice.
Somebody else.
It's about somebody else.
But not about me.
Okay, great, excellent. All right, so this shows a lot of sensitivity of Moshe Rabbeinu, and how we have to be careful. I think the reality is, and I saw some people talk about this when a lot of people went on vacation over this past week, especially if you have children in yeshiva. They didn't cancel yeshiva. People need to do stuff, but there should be a certain sensitivity with what are you posting on social media. Are you're posting that you're sitting by the beach, you're hugging Mickey Mouse, and there are people fighting a war. So, okay, should you hug Mickey Mouse? Should you not? Should you? It's a fair discussion. I think every family needs to make decisions on their own what they need to do for a vacation or not, or limit, whatever it might be. But when it comes to, do we need to announce this to the world while the Jewish people are are suffering? You need to announce it to begin with. I think I was talking to my students about this yesterday, and we're talking about tznius, and I said there's tznius, and you could talk about elbows and shoulders and necklines, but the more concerning tznius that we have today is really about what we are posting to the world, and that is a very important standard of tznius that we need to, I think, talk about more, and we have to be very, very careful of in general, and specifically this year. I think Moshe Rabbeinu had that sensitivity. Okay, let's now transition. So we discussed the order Yisro Moshe, Yisro Matan Torah, out of order, what that means, the impact of Moshe's children. We discussed what does it mean, Kohen Midian. We had a few different suggestions. The names themselves are out of order and what that means. And now we'll go to I would say, arguably the most famous Rashi in the Torah. Maybe? No? What's the most famous Rashi in the Torah? What's the most famous Rashi in the Torah?
Famous Rashi? I'm going to say the first one.
The first one, okay. I can't disagree. But maybe let's say top 5. Vayisu meRefidim vayivo midbar Sinai. The Jewish people left Refidim and they went to Midbar Sinai. Yeah, honey, what is it? Very good. Vayachanu bamidbar. They encamped in the Midbar. Vayichan sham Yisrael neged ahar. Right? Then they encamped by the mountain neged ahar. Says Rashi. Vayichan is in singular. Kishachad b'lev with one person, with one heart. Avol shar kol hachanayos, every other time that they moved, bitarumos ubimachlokas. There was fighting and there was chippering, right? Strife amongst everybody. No, when you're trying to move, you're packing up a house to leave somewhere. It's just stressful, and there's always fighting. So, ki'ishachad b'lev echad. Ask this is an excellence. You're going to get a good present for somebody. This is Rabbi Yaakov Bender on Chumash. It is really, really excellent. We get this art scroll page every week with the Divrei Torah. It's like a pamphlet. They only give us like 20 or 25. They're like taken already Friday night. They usually quote from Ray Bender. It's excellent. So he asks a very simple question. He says, weren't they Ki Ishachad B'Lev Echad when they left Egypt? Weren't they Ki Ishachad B'Lev Echad when they crossed the sea by Yam Suf? Okay, so you can argue that no, they were fighting. There was a little bit of fighting here and there. But weren't they Ki Ishachad B'Lev Echad when they were all subjugated and building these bricks? So he says, you think they were, weren't they? So he says the following. He quotes Rav Kalman Epstein. I don't know who Rav Kalman Epstein is. One shared a powerful thought with me. He said, it's easy to feel connected and identify with one another at times of distress and pain, when we are all victims sharing misery with one another. It is in good times, when there is no pressure, that unity is a real accomplishment. This is why the Torah, Dafka, teaches the message of Ki Ishachad B'Lev Echad here. When they're Kriyas Yam, they're running away from their enemies. When they're in Mitzrayim, they see their enemies being destroyed. When they're being subjugated, they're all in pain. They're suffering. Right? We don't see Chazal allude to maybe there's some fighting with Kriyas Yam, but in general, we don't see any fighting there because they're together when they're feeling the burden of their friends, of their brothers and sisters. When the Jewish people are going through pain, when people in general, right, are going through pain, you have a little bit more love for everybody. There's a little more space in your heart for everybody. I joked that on the El Al plains, when I went on the mission at the end of October, it was a little bit calmer. It was like, there was less stress getting, everyone was a little bit more chilled out. When we're going through difficult times, Ki Ishachad B'Lev Echad is not a chiddush. It's a necessity. But when is it a great accomplishment? When there's no pressure to do it. That's the beauty of Matan Torah, right? That's why this is the paradigm of unity. The paradigm of unity is Matan Torah. It's in difficult times that we always, have drawn close one to another. The challenge is to keep it alive in good times. This connects to a beautiful thought by Meir Shapiro. Meir Shapiro was the father of Daf Yomi, and fascinating figure, wrote Shiva of the Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin. Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin, you know what the entrance exam was? Yeah, to know 250 blot of Gemara by heart. That was the entrance exam. Whoa. Sarah has two great uncles that went to the yeshiva. One was murdered in the Holocaust, and one survived, came to America. And so Meir Shapiro quotes a Chazal, Gemara in Zvachim, I think Daf Kuf Tezayim, says that when Matan Torah happens, discusses in Parshas Noah, when Matan Torah happens, the world started shaking, and there was thunder and lightning, and the Umos HaOlam heard it. It was all over the world. Just like when the Kriyas Yam Suf happened, the Chazal say the water split everywhere. Is that literally meaning the water split everywhere? It could be. Or what it means is that when that happened, everybody knew about it. Everybody found out about it very quickly, even with no social media. So Matan Torah was happening. They heard thunder and lightning throughout the whole world. The Umos HaOlam came to their Gadol Hador. Who they go to? Bilam HaRasha. They went to Bilam, and they said, Bilam, what's happening here? Shema Mabel Yavo Olam. I'm concerned that there is a Mabel happening right now, because the last time that all this noise happened, in Shemayim, God, poured out all the mayonos to home, all the springs of the depths, and there was a big Mabel. And I thought God promised no Mabel again. So Bilam turned to them and said, no. The Jewish people are receiving the Torah. That's Meir Shapiro, why are we going to Mabel? We just had the Makos. Maybe there's a Makkah that's happening to the whole world now, not just Egypt. What's happening here? So he says, there was something very, very unique that happened at the time of the Mabel. And that was an unprecedented amount of unity in the teva itself, except for one time in Chazal, you never hear of any of the animals. It's almost idyllic. We have a Chazal, we have a pasuk in Nazi. Nachyomi starts again today. Yeshayahu, Yehoshua, Parak Aleph. It's not a bad idea. Pick it up one parak a day. In Sefer Yeshayahu, we have Garzev in Mari, that the wolves will live with the lambs and the lions everyone's going to live together. Why do we need to go back to Yeshayahu in the future? We had it already in the past. It happened on the Mabul. No animals fought with each other. They didn't fight with the people. The people themselves didn't fight. Pretty impressive. So Rameir Shapiro says that unity happened out of necessity. They had no choice. The world is falling apart. So the world's falling apart. We're going to fall apart too? No, we have no choice. We have to put it together. We have to get it together. But that's not the paradigm of unity. So the Umos HaOlam were sensing something was happening, something special was happening in the world. The Jewish people were banding together. They sensed that unity, tapped into. There's something powerful was happening in the world that similar to what's happening in the time of the Mabul. And Bilam turned to them and said, no, this is even more powerful. People are getting together, not out of necessity, but because they just want to, right? And that's a tremendous accomplishment, right? That's the thought of Rabbi Yaakov Bender over here about what really is happening with Matan Torah, and this is why this is a paradigm for unity as opposed to the other moments in history. Last thought for today comes from Dibra number 5. What is Dibra number 5? What is the 5th commandment? Kibbut Avim. Good. Kibbut Avim. So the way that the mitzvah of Kibbut Avim here is formed or formulated is very interesting. Okay, let me just get it up. Habedes avicha v'esimecha, honor your father and your mother. The S here includes older siblings. L'man yarichu yamecha, so that you will live a long life. Al hadamar asher Hashem Elokecha nosin lach, on the land that God will give you. What does that mean? Honor your parents, your mother and your father, so that you live a long life on the land that God will give you. Where is that? What land are we referring to? It's very strange, no? Kibbut Avim applies everywhere. No? So says.
Maybe that's the reward for Kibbut Avim. You're going to get a long life, and you're also going to get the land inheritance from home.
So some Mefarshim here are curious with this. So there's only 2 mitzvahs of the Torah that you have the idea of Arichas Yamim. One is Kibbut Avim, the other is Shiluach Echad. And they say one's the most classic mishpat. We understand if your parents took care of you when you were young, it only is your responsibility to pay back when it's a mitzvah sechli. It makes a lot of sense. This concept is not a concept. It's not a Jewish concept per se. It's a universal concept to honor your parents. And the mitzvah of Shiluach Hakan is the ultimate chok. Right? This way it confuses. So what gives us what? So we don't do mitzvahs because of the Arichos Yamim. We do them because it's Hashem's commandment. I saw in the Sfaria quote a sefer called Kuntras Chiba Yisera, who says the following thought. Usually, the main time or the main opportunity for the most amount of kibbut avim is when parents become elderly, right? When they're younger and they have all their energy and their strength, it's relatively easier to, leaving personalities aside, it's relatively easier to give them kibbut avim because what are they asking for? Visit me once in a while, have me over for Shabbat. Like what? It's not so complicated. It gets more complicated when parents get older. Lachain, Im techabed osam beziknusam, when they reach that, that age, when they're a little bit older, gam banecha yechabdu oscha beziknusam betarich yamim. He says it's a very simple idea. He says, why is it going to be that you're going to live a long age if you give kibbut avim to your parents? Because your children will see how you are treating your parents, and you're treating them well in their zikna stage. So too, your children hopefully will learn from that. You will be treated well by them, and that will help you, live a longer life. Just it makes a lot of sense what he said, right? Makes a lot of sense. Says in Itziv. Haya b'mashma, the pasuk sounds that the arichas yamim, or real arichas yamim, only applies on the land that God will give us. Im kain yesh lahavin hadachsiv kan al ha'adama. We have to understand what the implication of this is that we'll have long life on the land that God will give you. Ella ba hakas amikra bazeh ulamdenu ikar gadol. This pasuk comes to teach us a very important idea. Tifkar kasav haRamban beParshas Toldos ubechol makom sheTorah umitzoseha afagav the mitzvah she'in tluyos ba'aretz nohagos afilo b'chutz la'aretz. He says the Ramban writes, and this is a Ramban. I would say that's halacha v'lo lamaisa. The Ramban says doing a mitzvah in chutz la'aretz is practice. Doing a mitzvah in Eretz Yisrael is the real thing. Every mitzvah in Chutz La'aretz is a hechsher mitzvah to doing the real thing in Eretz Yisrael. Many gedolim or I would say gedolim, people that want to be sensitive to this, they put their tefillin on the plane because the flight is, en route to Eretz Yisrael. When they get to Eretz Yisrael, what do? They put tefillin on again. Why? In Eretz Yisrael. It was a hechsher mitzvah before, the Ramban. He says halacha lo l'maisa, it's a little bit dangerous, but it's an important Ramban. So he says, Mikomakom yuchados hema yoser be'Eretz Yisrael. Mitzvos are more special in Eretz Yisrael. Va'korchach nikreis Torah Elokei ha'aretz. Badavar muvan shlofi ze gam yeudeha afagav sheyesh lam b'chutz la'aretz mikomakom yoser misham shemim magim be'Eretz Yisrael. He says even a simple mitzvah. I mean by simple, like an obvious mitzvah, like kibbut avim, it's fulfilled greater. Its impact is greater, even, or not even, in Eretz Yisrael. It's enhanced. When we do mitzvos in Eretz Yisrael, they are more greatly enhanced. Right? It's not a discussion about my parents live in America, I'm making aliyah. All those questions are very, very important questions and impactful to all of us here in this room and beyond. But here it's just showing that even a mitzvah like kibbut avim, which is so logical, it's greater when it's done in Eretz Yisrael. So too, all the more so, all other mitzvos that are done, the impact of them is more profound. That has a greater impact on us and the world when they are done in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, with that we will finish up and wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Jay, how old?
She'll be a year old on Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And Jews, just to get you to know,
Shabbos, everybody.
her father has been
Well,
in Israel since November.
I'm sorry, someone was talking. What?
Her father is in the army in Israel since mid-November.
All right, he should be safe, man.
He should be safe, and he misses the first birthday. What could you do? All
Wow.
right.
We're expecting a great grandchild any day now. I think I was just asking my wife, and we got off. And the whole family, I think February was the only month we didn't have a birthday between children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren.
There you go.
So she made it into February. So we're waiting for a phone call. Anyway, you should have a lot of knockers. He should be safe. Klal Yisrael should be safe, including your son.
Amen.
Okay,
Thank you,
have
Joe.
a beautiful, either a beautiful, wonderful, or great day, any one of the three.
All of them. You betcha.
All of them. Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
You're the
Bye-bye.
best. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.